from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased joining me from the US, Srini. Srini, the way I love to do it is I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. So tell us a little more about you, your background, and what you're currently up to. Just like I would say, teaser for the audience, we're going to talk about blockchain and, of course, maybe intersection with AI. So the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mehmet. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here. So my name is Srini. I'm the CTO at Shardeum, and Shardeum is a layer 1 EVM-based blockchain. We'll talk about that a little bit. Before I came to Shardeum, I was the CTO for a company called Silks. And at Silks, we were building a blockchain-based game specifically around resources. So you could buy assets in the metaverse, you could buy stables, you could buy land, you could buy resources that actually had a representation. They were real resources born in the US and that raced in real races. And if you owned an NFT, every time the horse won something, you would win something. And it was important for it to be on the blockchain because it dealt with ownership, it dealt with provenance. So all of those things are important to us. So and before that, I was with DraftKings. I helped build out their blockchain infrastructure for one of their most popular games called Rainmakers. I hired out the whole team to build the infrastructure. Everything was on blockchain. It was pretty cool. I also did a small stint at AWS. I was trying to interest AWS in sort of building infrastructure for public blockchains, but they were sort of more focused on private blockchains. So, so that's sort of, but prior to that, my first brush with blockchain was when I was trying to sell my own startup. And we were encouraged to find a way to incentivize dentists and patients to use our product, but not have to pay for it, but, accept something else. And that's how I discovered this whole idea of using crypto and blockchain. It was a fascinating journey for me, but I'm very happy to be here. And I'm Shardeum. We're doing some amazing things. We are solving really hard problems, not just in distributed technology, but also in blockchain, doing something very unique, and not too many companies doing that. And that's what excites me. The technology is so fantastic.
Great. And thank you again, Srini, for being here with me today. Now, for people who might not be very much familiar with Shardeum, I like to ask it this way. So what is the motive behind Shardeum? What's the main problem that you are aiming to solve there? So if you can take us maybe in a journey, how things are done today and how you are doing it in a different way also.
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. So, the one of the things that interested me in Shardeum was when I was at Silks, we were selling racehorses, NFTs for racehorses, for about $1,200. But users are paying nearly $180 to $200 in gas fees. And clearly that was a terrible user experience. And because it was on Ethereum, every time somebody floated a meme coin or something like that, the gas prices were so unpredictable that it had a huge impact on how we sold our horses or our assets. So at that time, we were actively looking at layer 2 blockchains and a bunch of other options for us to see how we can reduce gas prices. And so that's how Shardeum floated into my horizon. And actually, let me take a step back. And so let's this is a useful visualization, and please feel free to jump in. It's obviously, I'm abstracting a lot of it, so I'm
Sure.
looking at a 50,000 foot view of. So if you think of a blockchain as a spreadsheet, right? It's a public spreadsheet that anybody can read. Every row in the spreadsheet is like a block, and every cell in that row is like a transaction. So it has some constraints. So anybody can see it, anybody can view it, but only obviously one person can write into that spreadsheet at any point in time. And this is where all the consensus mechanisms comes in. So every blockchain has its own mechanism to figure out who gets to write that row in the spreadsheet. And of course, blockchains also have this constraint that once you write a row, you can't update it. You can write a new row to say that, to overwrite, to say that the cells have new values, but you cannot edit the existing row. It's a simple visualization. That makes this is how traditional blockchains are. So what happens is, if you have a spreadsheet and you have say 1 billion rows in that spreadsheet, it quickly becomes unmanageable. So an interesting way of solving this problem is to say, I'll take this single sheet and break it up into many smaller sheets. So if you look like a telephone directory, I'm dating myself, but if you look at one of those, the names are organized by, in all the A's are grouped into one, all the B's are grouped into another, and so on and so forth. So you can imagine a similar system where you have this spreadsheet, but it has, say, 1,000 sheets. And the 1,000 sheets have data distributed in some particular way, partitioned in a way. So you don't have to look at the entire all the records at any point in time if you need to validate something in that. So you just need to look at that one sheet. So this is the concept of, this is like sharding. This is what Shardeum does. So it takes a huge space, it takes the whole spreadsheet and sort of breaks it up into smaller sheets, right? So now you have a different kind of scalability. You are now each node, if you will, if it's just looking at that one sheet, it has to deal with a smaller subset of data than looking at everything. So that makes it easier, faster processing. It scales better. The beauty of Shardeum is that you don't have a fixed number of sheets. That number of sheets can also vary. It's dynamically changing. So if you have a small data set, you might only have 100 sheets. As your data increases, that 100 may become 200, 1,000, 10,000, and it can scale linearly that way. So this is this dynamic state sharding that Shardeum has. So here is another part, right? So Shardeum doesn't do consensus at block levels. So what does that mean? So it means that today in traditional blockchains, you can only write a row into the spreadsheet at a time. But Shardeum allows you to say, update a single cell within that row. So you don't have to wait for that whole block. You can just change individual cells on that. That makes it really powerful because it changes how fast your transaction settles. The consensus is at a transaction level, not at the level of the block. It also eliminates things like, so one of the biggest problems in blockchains is that, because block producers, they can see what blocks are coming afterwards. So they can reorder transactions. They can reorder the cells in their row because they can see what's coming next, for instance. And so it allows them to do it gives them a little bit of control that they probably shouldn't have. But with Shardeum, it's not possible because there's no concept of writing it as a block. Each individual transaction is concerned separately. So all of this makes for a very scalable, very secure, and it also makes it, the more it scales, more decentralized it gets. So it really solves the trilemma in the blockchain space. And that's what is the most exciting thing I see about Shardeum. This is why I was completely drawn to Shardeum. The team is fantastic. This is a really hard problem to solve, even in any distributed system. And doing it in the context of decentralization, it's a very hard problem to solve. And that's the space I love.
Great. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, and this is, maybe one of the problems that the existing, solution like Ethereum and Solana cannot do, right? So they face scalability trade-offs. Now, let me ask you this, linear scalability that you're talking about. So the more you scale, the more decentralized become. So what does it mean for the users, and what does it mean for the developers on the top of the blockchain?
So what it means for users is that because so if you go back to our analogy, right? So instead of looking at a single sheet with a billion rows, you're now looking at small sheets, and the sheet will get smaller and smaller as we have more of these. What that means is that anybody who wants to participate in the node, what they need to validate, the resource required for that becomes smaller and smaller. So you can think of how that's why we call it decentralization for everyone, because the cost of adding yourself to participate in a Shardeum node is very small. That means that we can include a lot of people to participate in our network, sort of making it more secure, and it makes it linearly scalable. So what it means is that, going back to our analogy, so we may start out with say 1,000 sheets, let's say, right? And as the transaction volume increases, we may dynamically change that to 1,200 sheets or 1,500 sheets or 2,000 sheets. So that's how it scales linearly. And as the number of, and it's because it's dynamic, the volume of transactions that a node has to handle doesn't increase, but it can be the same or it can decrease. So the transactions per second will still remain the same, but the system will be able to handle a larger transaction volume, if that makes sense.
Yes, but for developers, from developers' perspective, so people who want to build application on top, any
Yes.
benefits? Yeah.
Yeah. So interestingly, we are completely EVM compatible. So what that means is that any smart contracts that you built on any other EVM project should just transparently work on Shardeum. That's one. The second benefit is all of this complexity that I'm talking of is abstracted behind this EVM API. So in theory, a developer should not see any change except that their transactions be faster, their settlement will be sooner, their finalization will be sooner. They should only see benefits of this, but all of the magic happens behind the scenes. So they should have, they would not see any of that.
Right. So uh, now you talked about security, Srini, but like if you want to like open it more, like from because the way blockchain, it was like also always introduced that it's like of course we talk more about privacy, we talk about you know kind of anonymity also as well, but when it comes to security, and we've seen like you know some incidents. So what is the add-on value that the Shardum can bring when it comes to securing the blockchain?
Yeah. Um, so in traditional blockchains, right, the consensus mechanism picks who can write that row into that spreadsheet, right? Um, so in the case of Shardeum, because the data is sharded, um, any specific node that's processing, say, one sheet, it only has a limited view of the entire system. So we use our own consensus mechanism called proof of quorum, and it's a fairly sophisticated mechanism where a group of to make it very simple. So uh, we select a pre-selected set of nodes, not pre-selected, a random set of nodes are selected to participate in a consensus for handling a certain set of transactions. We call that, that happens in a unit of time called a cycle. This is selected at random, and even within that group, how the consensus, you need to have within that for each set of transactions, we select a smaller group. It's randomly selected a smaller group of validator nodes that have some stake in that transaction. Maybe they are, maybe it's like, let's say I'm transferring some tokens. A is transferring some tokens to B, and the shard that owns the address of A and the shard that owns the address of B would participate in that group. But there could be other groups so that there's some kind of overlap. So all of this the selection happens at random, and it changes in every cycle. So no validator knows, no node will actually know all of the transactions in the system. And even within that, in that group, each validator node knows only a very small piece of the entire state. So it will be extremely hard for somebody to break in, to compromise that system, which is, the selection is randomized and it changes all the time. And it's there, you need, like, to breach that, you need like a super majority to make a transaction actually be verified. So like 2/3 of the selected in the selected set of nodes have to agree that this transaction is valid for it to be so that really adds multiple layers of security to the protocol.
Got you. Now, like, who are you seeing, the most, I would say, excited about this? Like, uh, any like specific maybe use cases that you see people, whether like it's users, developers who adopted the Shardom, like maybe any partnerships also that you have done that you can share that with us.
So I think Shardeum, like I said, for people like before I came here, people who are developing applications, say using NFTs, where gas price was an issue, this is a very attractive solution for them. Anybody building DeFi applications, it's a super, this is very exciting. I can scale linearly, infinitely, without impacting gas prices, keeping them, gas prices are really low. All of that would be very interesting to any DeFi developer. So it's like, while our primary target market would be companies and developers building, dApps, but even as a pure token transfer protocol, I can see companies that would just want to do, like, money transfer companies, even they should be interested in this, because the gas prices are so low and it scales. So all of these are very valid target users for Shardeum.
Got you. I've seen, on the website, like and I believe like this is something many comments, so ignores a little bit. So there's a lot of things like regarding open source and making things very transparent. How this is important usually, and how you have adopted this transparency, I would say, at Shartium.
Open source is very important to us. We are an open source project, and absolutely, transparency is a key tenet of that. We are building everything. It's like a goldfish in a bowl. We are building everything in the open. All our sources is on GitHub. It's all public, and anything that everything that we build is available on GitHub for people to look at. So that should inspire a lot of confidence in people that we are doing what we say we are doing, and they should, they can look at our code, they can see what we're doing, and we are hugely supportive of the open source community. In fact, we have a whole specific department group just focused on enabling open source development and building out that community. And we have a lot of people working on that, actually.
Great to hear. Great to hear. So I can't have nowadays any conversation without asking about the AI.
Sure.
So maybe in general, you share your, as a veteran CTO, you've been, for a long time in the tech. So just your view on the combination of AI with blockchain, and maybe some of the use cases that you can share, how you are adopting AI at Shardeum.
Um, AI is an incredibly fast moving field, right? I mean, if you think of it, whatever I looked at a month ago has already changed and it's become obsolete. So it's an interesting intersection between AI and blockchain. And we use AI quite a bit. All our developers use some form of AI in our product for writing code, for looking at building unit tests, uh, for analyzing code. We use it quite extensively. The standard tools, GitHub, Copilot, um, all of these things. I think there's a very interesting intersection between. So I can see how blockchain developers would leverage all of AI to write better smart contracts, optimize for gas, optimize in other ways, look at security issues, to see, to look at, what possible attack vectors they could mitigate. I can see how AI can really be useful for people creating dApps on the blockchain. There's also a very interesting intersection between, like for instance, Shardeum, because our gas prices are so low, and all of AI, Gen AI development is tokenized. Shardeum could be a very useful a tool to make that process of paying for tokens, cheap and easy, inexpensive and easy to use. So that's one use case right out of the bat. There's also, we also see a lot of synergy between how blockchain does a great job of transparency. So anything that you let me see if I can phrase this correctly.
Sure.
The intersection between AI and blockchain is very interesting, because AI allows you to explore new things, look at data in different ways, and create products that allow you to parse and 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 look at different use of the same data. And where blockchain can help is make this process simpler, easier, and less expensive. Yeah, you can. Yeah, I can see how blockchain can provide that layer of security, transparency that AI actually needs. Because today, when Gen AI, creates something, we actually don't know whether it's you. Today's technology, you need a human to look at what is produced by Gen AI and see if that's actually accurate. And once you have a few iterations, it's hard to keep track of that. And I think this is where blockchain can actually play a role, because it's the transparency that blockchain provides can be very useful for AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's still a lot of use cases to uncover in the future also as well
Absolutely.
too. Yeah, and yeah, to your point is the AI is such fast. You said 1 month. Believe me, sometimes I feel like
Yeah.
after 1 week. Some people, by the time they see something else came out, and I said, "Yeah, guys, you're so late to the game.
Right.
This became obsolete." Yeah. So maybe one thing, Siri, we can cover also. So let's be like realistic.
Mm.
This domain, the blockchain domain, uh, regardless what people look at it or something like this, but it proved, the technology proved itself, right? And this is why now we started to see some folks who maybe work in different, I would say, fields as engineers or as executives like yourself, as CTOs, who are saying now, okay, you know what? Like maybe the time is for me to go and work, in a team working on something blockchain. So, like any like kind of playbook that they need to follow so they can shift from whatever they are in today to the blockchain.
Yeah. I think people who have, you need to have a very good understanding of how distributed systems work. That's the first step to decentralization. And sometimes people get confused between distribution and decentralization. Um, one of the things that I that we used to say in Amazon is that the fundamental rule in any distributed system is that it will break. It's just a matter of when. So n- having that mindset that something is always going to fail, and being resilient for failure and thinking in that mode is a very good way of getting into the mindset. And blockchain just takes it one level deeper from distributed systems. So now you have so I would say that anybody who wants to work in blockchain, they should be very comfortable working in distributed systems. Cryptography is another area that, if you have to be interested in cryptography, to it all depends on at what level of the blockchain. Before I got to Shardeum, I was always on the other side. I was a user of blockchain technologies, and that requires a very different skill set. You need to be able, you need to uh, you know uh, if you're writing smart contracts, right? So these smart contracts are typically, the good ones are immutable. So what that means is that you have to write code that you cannot change. And then uh, so you have to be super careful to write code that can either heal itself, or can, it can uh, it should essentially run pretty much uh, you know by itself without any tweaking or any updates. And that's really hard to do. So you have to be a good software engineer, and you have to be able to think to be in that space, to work in that space. Of course, there are ways in which you can theoretically modify smart contracts, but idea is still the same, is that it's like not encouraged in many of the applications. You don't want somebody writing a DeFi application that can be modified later on. So anybody who wants to move into this blockchain space, I would say you have to be comfortable with thinking of distributed systems that can fail at any time. And that's, I think, and your programming mode has to switch to adapt to that. You cannot assume that whatever you write will just work. What happens if it fails? You have to be able to think that, and it will
Yeah.
fail.
And I think same applies from, yeah, I mean, leadership skills perspective. They need to understand the technology, and they need also to, in addition, to have all the traits of whatever it takes to become, a CTO in an edge technology. Uh, Still, the conversation really was, amazing. Anything that, I didn't touch on, maybe you want to highlight, as kind of final things as we wrap up, and also where people can get in touch and learn more about what you're currently doing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So, not to be shilling for Shardeum, but that's shardeum.org is a good place for people to go and learn more about Shardeum. Shardeum is, so the thought I want to leave you with is that Shardeum is an incredible idea. It's technology that it's solving some really hard problems in not just distributed computing, but also in blockchain computing. And Shardium provides a way for uh, a blockchain to not only be secure and scalable, but also be decentralized at the same time. So it solves the trilemma, the blockchain trilemma, at the same time keeping the gas cost low and predictable. So I think that makes it a very compelling solution for a lot of people working in DeFi, or in anything that they think a layer one blockchain can be useful for. Um, I'm also going to caveat it by saying that blockchain is not a solution for all problems. If you're just looking for just a shopping cart, or a shopping application, maybe a centralized application, just Stack would be just fine. But in cases where decentralization is important, I think Shardeum can play a huge role in that. And I think that's the takeaway.
Great. Yeah, great, Srini. Thank you for sharing this. And, of course, I will put the link um, in the show notes and in the description. Any social media where people can also maybe follow you or get in
Yeah.
touch?
We are also on Discord. We are on X, Twitter.
Okay.
So yes, absolutely. And if they go to the shardeum.org site, they can see all the social media coverage that we have.
Great. I will make sure that I will put all these links there. So thank you very much, Srini, for your time today. And for the audience, as I said, you will find the links in the show notes. And this is how I end usually my episodes. This is for the audience, guys. If you just discovered this podcast, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, please give us a thumb up and share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who keeps supporting us, sending us their encouragements and suggestions, thank you for doing so, and thank you for making us trending in the top 200 charts across multiple countries this year, and making the CTO show with Mehmet as one of the top 40 most listened business podcasts in Dubai. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mehmet.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.